Welcome to Get Centered. This is our summer episode, and I, being the acupuncturist who tends to discuss all things acupuncture and Chinese medicine and the nature of nature, wanted to be the first one to orient us to summertime. If you live in or around the Houston, Texas area, you are well aware that it is plenty hot outside. But of course, summer is related to the element of fire because of that heat, and it's related to the heart, and therefore it's related to the cardiovascular system, the small intestines or digestive fire, and the emotion of joy. And there are so many ways we talk about summer, fire, and heat colloquially, but we just don't really notice we're even saying it. So I'm going to run through a fun list of things that we talk about. We might say, if we are feeling particularly creatively generative, we might say, I'm on fire right now. We talk about, like I just mentioned, a digestive fire if we have a really good, strong gut. We talk about things being sexy as being hot. We know that if you have a red sports car, insurance is priced higher than if you have like a gray sedan. If you shoot a gun, we talk about firing a gun. If you get fired from a job, you're propelled into a new reality. We know that friction creates heat, whether that's sexy time friction or being in an argument and a disagreement, that heat that comes up. We say, oh my gosh, you look so angry, you could blow. And obviously we're referring to the heat and activity of a volcano. Think about how flexible your muscles and tendons and ligaments become when they're exposed to heat, as opposed to trying to do the same movements in a freezing cold room. So we know that physical, emotional, and social activity can raise our temperatures. So these things all illustrate the property of summer. And what I love is that we as a species are always saying, give me a sign, give me a sign. And these signs are literally all around us. We can tune into what's going on in nature and catch the wave and use the momentum of what a particular season is showing us out in nature and apply that to ourselves to be able to operate at our own optimal capacity. So summer, fire, and heat and joy, all these things are about growth, generativeness, transformation, movement, heat, brightness, climax, or apex. So we can remember back to chemistry, just basic chemistry. When a molecule is, if cold temperatures are added to that molecule, they slow down. And eventually, if it's cold enough, reaching freezing temperatures, that molecule stops moving altogether and we have something that's frozen. And conversely, when we add heat to that molecule, it starts moving faster and faster. And if we're talking about a liquid, right, it starts to reach boiling. The reason it's boiling is not just because it's hot and it boils. It's boiling because the molecules are jumping around. That's what the heat does to the molecule. So we need to kind of remember that basic building block of heat and cold, because you might remember in our wintertime episodes, we were talking about retreat, restore, calm down, contemplate, reflect. And you can look at it like, let me step back 1 second. The thing is that each season begets and generates the next season. So when we were talking about retreat, restore, take it easy in wintertime, we were saying that not just because that's what the season is asking us to do, but because when we move into the incoming season, we now are stronger and able to move into that next season more optimally. So you can look at it like what I was starting to say a second ago. You need fuel in a car for it to go. So winter time would be the time that you're actually filling the car with gas. Okay, and summer would be when you take that road trip. You can look at it like a water reservoir, because wintertime is the element of water. And when you can sort of tune into the signs that we were talking about of nature and go, oh, everything around me seems quite dormant, quite still, quite calm, quite dark. I'm going to wake up late and go to bed early. I'm going to be more contemplative, maybe journal more often rather than make plans socially. as often as I might in the summertime or spring, you're actually filling up that water reservoir so that when the next season comes, spring comes, and it's the time of birth, you have this full reservoir for watering all of the stuff that's starting to bloom and grow. And then because of that being a full season, you have stuff just generating and reaching its climax and apex in summer, so that you have a beautiful harvest come late summer, early fall. So remembering that we're not just saying these things, these little bits of advice on how to operate in each season just for the sake of it. There's a really good reason. So each season of your life is better off or stronger because of the acknowledgement and the consciousness you brought to the season before it. So on a macro level, or that's really kind of macro seasonally, but then we can look at it one step closer to us as human beings and think, okay, well, this is a season of my life. Summer can be related to a season of life, as opposed to winter being related to a season of life. So just for a general sense of understanding around this, when you're in utero, you're in a winter season. It's dark, it's quiet, it's calm, right? It's mysterious. And then when you're born into a spring. Something is being birthed or rebirthed, like we talked about in our Renaissance recording. And then summertime would be this very rapidly growing human, right? The bones are growing. We're accumulating knowledge and information constantly. So this first half of life could be considered the summer season of our lives. And so we're collecting in that season of our life, right? We're getting grades and awards and trophies and degrees and titles and nicknames and all of our ego orientation. Who am I as it relates to the way the world organizes people and puts them into categories? And the second half of life is quite the opposite, so whereas in the first half of life, I'm wondering who am I as it pertains to what other people think of me? What do I have? What am I doing? The second half of life would be more, I just am. I am. Whether you consider me that or not, or you want to give me a trophy or an award for it or not, it doesn't matter. And then on a micro level, we have just how are we in summer? How do we make the most of our summer season? So because of the things I mentioned right out of the gate, this heart organ, cardiovascular system, small intestine, digestive system, joy, relativity, we've got a recommendation for physical activity. Wake up early, go to bed late, but maybe take a little break in the hottest part of the day, in the middle of the day. You're taking advantage of the brightness that there is, the length of the day. You have more diet flexibility so that you can expand your diet in the wintertime. We're asking you, you've heard us before say, please, not the cold foods in wintertime, have warm stews and so forth. Summertime, watermelon, cucumber, smoothies, sushi, salads, all of it. That's on the menu again. Make plans and be social. It's tricky because of COVID. Just use your own discretion. If it has to be a Zoom social activity, just put your feelers out there and start to reconnect if you've been hibernating. And the final thing I want to say is we all know that fires can rage out of control, or there may sometimes even not even be a spark to even light a fire. And if you find yourself as somebody who's like, oh gosh, all these recommendations for summer, I don't feel like I've got it in me, that means that you probably have a deficiency in this heart organ. And acupuncture can help you with that. Okay, we've got to have a fire to even light in the first place. And if you feel like, I feel like this all the time, I can't even sleep at night, I'm in summer all the time, that probably means you have too much fire. We need to pour a little bit of water onto that fire. And so what I'm trying to say is that acupuncture, psychotherapy, mindfulness, all of these things can kind of help us stay in that nice contained space for fire, because we need it, but we just don't want none, and we don't want too much. So I'm curious to know what each of you thinks of all of this.
Thanks so much, Leila-Scott. That was great. And what I thought What immediately I went to in sort of my line as a Jungian analyst working with clients is that the idea of heat and heart being so much more associated with emotion and with feeling, of course. And what happens so much in the psychotherapy world is that we get stuck in our head and think that we can think our way through problems or through situations or through trauma. And to me, as you were explaining that, the idea of hot and cold is perfect. That the ideas and the concepts are necessary, but they are more cold, something like that. And the necessity of heating up the body, heating up food for consumption, transformation, all that stuff, needs the right amount of heat for the emotional component. And so the thinking of our logical mind and our emotional selves as hot and cold, to me, feels like a really helpful analogy.
Conceptually, I imagine we can all grasp, what it means to be too hot or not have enough heat. Could you speak about diagnostically what you're looking for when you're looking for too much heat or not enough heat?
Emotionally, too much heat or heart heat in particular would be what looks like mania. And not enough at all would look like depression. So that would be an emotional example of what that looks like diagnostically. There's all kinds of digestive ways that we could look at it. People may not want to hear it right now, but
You're gonna talk about poop, right?
yes. And here's a way to kind of put it as nicely as I can think of at the moment. Nothing's TMI for me, but I'm just trying to be sensitive to other people. If you can imagine a dumpster that's outside and it's winter time, okay, so all kinds of food scraps are in it, but it's really cold outside, it's not going to emit much of an odor, right? However, if it's summertime, the same things are in that dumpster, you're going to walk by it and just, oh my God, right? It's like a completely different experience, same ingredients. That temperature is what was different. So that goes on in our digestive system, right? So we're looking at the bowels in all kinds of ways, smell being one of them. Of course, we use things like tongue and pulse, because heat has an element of quickness to it. If somebody's pulse is particularly rapid, we're going to consider a heat syndrome. If their tongue is bright red, red being the color of heat, fire, right? It's going to be bright red.
I still want to talk about poop though.
You do?
Yeah, because here's why. I mean, because I'm married to you, I've been initiated into this awareness. But I think that as you were talking about that, it's funny. Like, rarely are you asked by. I mean, I just had a physical, and not one question. I got a good doctor, right? Not one question about poop.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched this really cool documentary recently called "Kiss the Soil."
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that the one where they were talking?
Kiss the dirt. I think
Kiss the dirt. Yeah. Your dumpster, of course, I think about our composting and kind of what's necessary for the like really rich, fertile soil. And who was it? It was Patricia Arquette that said, "Keep poop in the loop."
Yeah.
I can, of course, like go off for 2 hours probably right now thinking about what it means that we don't like to talk about shit. Yeah. Because psychologically that means we're not wanting to look at excrement. We're not looking, but ironically, that's exactly what makes fertilizer. And so our culture is built around separating this stuff and treating it as opposed to integrating it. And I think when it comes to your physician, whether it's a Chinese practitioner, a traditional Chinese medicine, or anybody else, to not even educate somebody about the quality of their poop is a mistake. Mm-hmm. And psychologically, we all do something therapeutic regarding our psychology. When somebody isn't ready to look at their shit, as we say colloquially, right? That's not a good sign, right? That's a sign that there are a lot of denial aspects. There's a lot of repression going on. There's an anxiety about the nature of nature. And so I want to push this point a little bit just because I like it. And it's like, oh, of course that matters. And it's diagnostic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different kinds of poop.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There definitely are. And it's comical when people come in and they're like, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to gross you out. I'm like, are you kidding me? I love this stuff. But your example of the compost and keeping poop in the loop is such a good one. I mean, when we were starting our own compost pile, I remember being advised, be careful not to have it too close to a fence because this will start a fire. You know what I mean? And you can stick your hand down in there and it is burning up, burning up. It requires so much heat for that transformation and breakdown to occur. And then of course, like this is a whole nother thing, but the other important piece is that microbiome that goes on
Glad you got there.
the excrement, right? And so all the reason that heat is there is because it's alive, it's filled. I was reminded recently, we've talked about this before, but I've never had really an exact percentage and as close as we can get, right? But we're 1% human, 1% human, 99% other
Everything
creatures.
else.
Everything else.
Yeah.
That's bacteria, viruses, all of it. It's just amazing. Which I'll think of the list of things that we say, and we don't even really realize that we're talking about the nature of nature in our human experience.
Those are our metaphors.
I was thinking about anger specifically as like blow your top or whatever. You're gonna explode, right? It's like a fire. But it does feel also hot when you're angry, right? Like you might say hot and bothered or whatever, right? They're like they're hot. Like, oh, he's hot. He's gonna don't go with it. Leave him alone. And I'm thinking about how we work with anger as an indicator of something potentially underneath that. Because for me, I'm aware in myself that generally if I'm angry, it's because if I can peel back the layer enough and to look at what's, the excrement of it, the part I really don't want to look at, it's kind of like, oh, I might be scared. Right. And right. Or ashamed or something like that. Right. And those may be so uncomfortable for me that I would rather transform them into some other hot thing that I can hopefully get it out or whatever, right? Instead of sitting with it and being with it and feeling it, I may want to transform it into anger because at least that feels more active maybe than passive, like passively experiencing fear. Oh, no, I don't like that. At least I'll be active. I'll be angry. I'm thinking about the what's underneath, like what's under the engine, what's in the ground level of all this. And I'm curious what your experience is when you hear somebody come in and say like, oh, I've just been really angry lately, or I was so angry. And what are you looking for in terms of in the body to see?
Yeah. Well, anger kind of, it's not that it doesn't involve the heart, right? We're all one thing. So it's all involved, but anger and irritability in particular, we tend to look more toward like liver, gallbladder, but in particular, the fear aspect that you mentioned is interesting to know that the heart and the kidney have a very, very close relationship in Chinese medicine as they do in Western medicine. And so because there's this very tight feedback loop, you can imagine that if the kidneys and adrenal glands are firing up with fear, that heat rises. It rises in a house, it rises in your body, it goes up and it hits the heart starts pumping, and then you have that similar feeling you do of something like of anger, right? Like that same hot mania, like I'm just going to blow type thing we were talking about before. So it's all certainly related. Also, anger, liver, gallbladder, that's the wood element, which just precedes the fire element. And so if we have, right, this is kind of getting, I don't want to say messed up, but backed up, it can then affect, it goes into the next one. Which one is this circular for y'all? So wood, fire, right? So it goes wood leads into fire. You burn wood to get fire. Fire leads to earth. Ashes lead to earth. Earth generates metal. Metal contains water. Water nourishes wood. So it's this whole engendering cycle. And there's a whole control cycle as well, but we don't have time for that at the moment.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're saying also that there is an element of like, when I get to fire, I may also like take one step back on the loop and say, okay, where's the wood?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
maybe there's too much wood here or whatever, right? Too
Yeah.
much wood at
Or
once.
not enough water, right? We use water to control the fire.
Right. Wow.
Thanks everybody for being here for this opener to our summer season, and look forward to what's to come. This is your first half of life season, so go out there, be active, make the most of it.